I'm Michelle.
And I'm Catherine.
And we're here at the Healthy Hurried Human Podcast,
where we talk about keeping pace in a world that never slows down. There is a lot of conversation right now about the importance of knowing your purpose in life. And I think it's a great idea for us to have purpose-driven be the first one we discuss. I know for me, when I started working with you and you showed me this wheel, that was the one that really stuck out for me. And I don't think I had realized how significant it is for everyone to understand their personal purpose.
This is one that when we go in to do another training, we often get people asking, can you come back and take us through, work us through purpose-driven, what it means to find purpose, why is it important? This one gives me all the good feels to talk about because I wish I had brought the quote with me, but it had popped up, I think, on my social media because we talked about this a few years ago, that nothing ignites the heart than understanding what our purpose is in life. And I thought, I should have kept it and brought it with me today, but I didn't. Purpose is really important, but more important than just the overall idea of purpose is, for me, I want people to understand that we have two purposes. And there's daily purpose, and then there's life purpose. And people if we don't understand that there are two, this is where people kind of get muddled and they start getting, they're not content because this isn't my purpose. Taking care of my children or caring for elderly parents or the job that I am, this is not my purpose. You are right. That is not your life purpose, but that is your purpose for this season in life. So we have two. Daily purpose are I like to say the roles that we play. So whatever, and we change hats and roles throughout the day several times. But those are your purpose. You do get up because you have children. You do get up because somebody's depending on you. You do get up because you need to go to that job because it pays the bills. You have dependents who are depending on you. That is purpose, and we can't take the level of importance away from daily purpose, but it's important that people understand daily purpose changes with the seasons of your life. And then there's life purpose, and that operates from, I like to say, our worldview, and that tends to follow us. A lot of times we can trace it back to middle childhood and the way we view the world, the way the world shaped for us, that kind of attaches and it follows us. Now, how that looks can change. So if you have a person who says, my life purpose is to inspire people to live, a certain type of way, whether it's the yoga way or it's a spiritual way, that's my life purpose, is to inspire people to do that. How you do that may change throughout your life because you may not be able to be a speaker, but you can write a book or you can have a podcast or you can send out newsletters. How you do that will change, but that tends to follow you. Your life driving purpose tends to follow you throughout all the seasons of your life. So that, to me, is so important that people understand you've got these two types of purpose that drive us.
So you've got your daily roles and then your life purpose. Mm-hmm. And so your daily roles are more like your title at work or your roles that you have in the family, mm-hmm. And all of those have significance. You might be the only one doing them, but they're not the overarching purpose for your life. When you were talking about it, it made me think of Steve Hartman, and a lot of times I can't remember the segments that they call On the Road with Steve Hartman, where they'll do like a segment, and sometimes when it's children and they will get a desire for like a newspaper route to raise money for specific charity
Yeah.
or a lemonade stand, or they'll start doing something that's really heartfelt, because even at a young age, they can identify a need and they want to help that need. And oftentimes they end up building a career out of this. Because when you said that middle school age, I started thinking about what was I passionate about when I was in middle school, or what were my concerns about the world, the bigger world picture.
Do you remember?
No, I don't. I mean, I literally just thought that when you said that, so I haven't really reflected much on it, but I might by the end of the session.
Well, I can think back to middle school and remember that I really wanted to help people. I don't think in middle school I knew that was through mental and emotional. I don't know that I had the labels or thought, hey, that's a way to do it. Whereas a lot of times you'll talk to a teacher or a nurse or somebody who's in the medical field, and around that age, they wanted to help people. But as you're growing, you're learning what ignites you. I remember kind of judging myself in high school because there were peers who wanted to go on trips, and they loved the work trips. I want to build buildings, and I want to do all the physical labor on these trips around the world. And I remember thinking, I really like helping people, but I must not want to help them enough because I don't want to do that.
Oh, interesting.
But that's part of, I didn't know enough then to not judge myself that, hey, you like helping people. It doesn't have to look the same, but you're in that middle school, high school, college, you're learning what ignites me and how I want to serve humanity. How do I want to help people? So I bet if you were to, outside of this, go back and think through middle school, what was it that you used to think about? There was something you were wanting to do for the betterment of other people. And we're going to talk about that in a minute when we talk about what are the elements that purpose serves.
To get off middle school, because when I'm actually reflecting on it, I'm thinking about two different scenarios that if I said, it'd be hilarious because it's more given to my personality and who I am today than my purpose. But they were showing up young ages, like certain things that I'm still today were very prevalent then. But what really stands out to me about purpose was when I first started working with you. And I remember looking at you and saying, Michelle, I don't think I know what my purpose is. And you smiled and said, I bet if you asked a couple of key questions, and you talked me through some questions. So I guess for anybody else out there listening that says, I don't know what my greater life purpose is, how do you start this journey?
So first of all, I have to say this, it's incredibly important. This is why it's one of the key functional indicators and why it's on the wheel, because this is an important journey that everybody should start. I like to call it the journey of discovery, because it's not a once and done, let me figure it out, let me take an assessment and boom, now I know my purpose. It's really a walking journey of discovery. And if we don't take it, what happens is we leave space for us to identify as insignificant. If we do not feel that we have purpose and we aren't fulfilling that purpose, we leave space in our heart and in our mind to identify ourselves as insignificant. And somebody might say, well, what's the big deal? We don't all need to feel significant. Yes, we do. You and I talk about this. That's one of our greatest needs. One of our two great needs as human beings. But when we walk around with this identity of I'm insignificant, we then decide in our brain, in our mind, in our hearts that we don't bring value. And when we all know what happens when we don't bring value, that opens the door for destructive emotions of loneliness and depression and the other things that can follow. So it's incredibly important that if anybody, if someone's listening today, if nothing else, they're inspired to, hey, I want to at least start this journey of discovering what is my purpose. I'm not saying you have to know what it is, just start discovering what could possibly be your life purpose, because you are significant. You do bring value.
You said one time that I wrote this down. Discover your purpose, a journey that creates purpose within itself. I thought that was so great. Just the process of the journey brings purpose.
That's right.
And it's just very fulfilling. We all have it. We all have something that's uniquely our own. Well, it may not be just our own, but it's significant. It's unique to ourselves.
That's right.
And how we approach it.
You'd ask, and how do we start that? And just these simple questions that I'm going to give you are enjoyable questions to ask. So the first one, and I had told you this, if you're not sure what your purpose is, get with your friends, get with people who know you, and ask them, how do I show up to life? How do you see me showing up to life? And can we use you?
Sure. Yeah.
So you didn't ask me, but I decided to tell you. But I think you asked some of your friends, and we all kind of, and I don't even know the friends that you asked me. We all kind of concurred. I always think of Leonardo DiCaprio in that movie where he's like, I concur. You know what
Catch me if you can. Just
right?
in case you're wondering.
So I concur with them that you show up to life to add the extra joy and the sparkle. Like Catherine, for our listeners who may not know her, like I know her, you literally see a void and say, how can I fill it? And then not only can I fill it, but how can I bring extra joy, extra sparkles, extra, I say you're the ribbon on top.
Oh,
and
nice.
That is how I see you showing up to life. And so ask that to me. I'm like, that's a great conversation. Go out to dinner when you're with your friends. Let's talk about me for a second. How do you see me showing up for life? That's the first discovery question. Ask the people who know you, how do you see me showing up for life? The second, what would you do for free? What would you spend your time doing? What do you do for free for people, for others? That's the second. The third is, it's not a question, it's more of a challenge, and it's to say yes to new things. You do a good job of doing that. That's something I see you do, is you tend to have my husband and I call this a gamer attitude. I have no idea where, like your game, I guess maybe where.
Down for it.
Yeah. We say about our kids, yeah, they'll be game. They're a gamer. Or about friends that we have, who's the gamer? Who will jump in and do this with us? We decided to do a hillbilly version of pickleball at our house. And so we live in a cul-de-sac, and we were kind of as a family getting into pickleball. And so my husband says, I'm going to paint the pickleball court. And which kid do you think will, so we decide which kid is the gamer who will be like, yeah, this is a great idea, Dad. And so we call the hillbilly pickleball court because somebody was game to try new things. So the challenge is try new things, be a gamer, jump in, be willing to kind of look foolish or look silly, because I think as adults, we don't like to try things if we're not going to be good at it. It can be really hard. And last, this is kind of more of a fact. I mean, a fact, if we want to call, I'm really stretching it on that. But when it comes to your life purpose, it will always be about the betterment of humanity. If it's about you and your betterment, that's not your life purpose. That's your life desire maybe, or what brings you joy. But when it comes to purpose, you're going to always be able to trace it back to, it's going to be for the betterment of humanity.
I had a conversation with my oldest nephew about that this weekend. He is about to finish his rookie year with the fire department. And he was talking about what brings significance to his life. And we brought up purpose. And my dad made the observation that his job is already for the betterment of humanity, right? His job is one of the most consistently honored professions in our country and well respected, and the whole role is for the betterment of humanity. But then how do you go beyond that for something more niche for him to put his own significance out into the world? Because he's a firefighter, but he's at this age where he's saying, I want more fulfillment to be significant for the better. He's looking for his own individual purpose outside of the fire department.
I think you bring up a good point that people who are in service industry, nurses, doctors, firefighters, police officers, public service, this could be a little bit of a blurry thing for them because they spend their job doing the betterment of humanity. But I have to say, you have to come back to some of these basics where, yes, that's what you do. You get paid for. You may love it and it's a passion for you, but you still have to ask people that know you, how do you show up in life outside of your work? Because as much as we can be passionate about the work that we do, we have to be careful not to allow that to become our identity.
So you keep saying, like, when we've worked with companies to help them define their core values, one of the things that I learned at an NCEO conference years ago is you already have values in your company. You just kind of need to go observe them and be honest about what they are and decide if you need to change them. And I keep thinking about that when you're discussing this. We already do have, even if we don't know what it is, we already do have purpose in people's lives.
That's right.
Like, that's how I show up for you in life. And it's funny because I was thinking about at work, I was constantly trying to do that at my last job, is put the sparkle, put the bow. We had a long-standing running joke with one of my bosses about an event I was doing where I wanted extra money to do uplighting. And he's like, we don't need the uplighting, but I was all about the ambiance, right. Trying to create this whole realm that people would walk into and be taken out of, a Clarion hotel in Chattanooga, right? I wanted it to be something dynamic. And so when you said that, I thought about, even at my job, I was the one who noticed we needed more artwork here. We needed more, special cookies to celebrate somebody's birthday, or, that's just something that is so consistently running in the back of my head that I wouldn't have necessarily known that was a purpose until I talked to my friends about how do I show up in their life. And, why is it, but when I was asked the question, it seemed daunting. Why do you think it's so hard to ask this question? Why is it difficult?
I love that you're asking that because you're not alone in this. I've been teaching this topic for a long time, and that is probably one of the most consistent questions is, why is this so hard? Because we could see some people who are like, gosh, their purpose is so clear and they know what it is, but mine isn't. It's blurry. I like to use that phrase blurry because it's there. I think people sense that there's something there and they just can't. It's like putting your glasses on and it's just not clear. And it's blurry for people, I think, now in this time and space that we live in, is because everything matters. Everything has to matter. But what people don't understand and don't give themselves permission for, is that everything does not have to matter to me and to you. And we live in a time and space that everything has to matter and it must matter to you. And if it doesn't matter to you, then I'm going to hold you accountable for that. And I want people to understand you do not have to hold space for everything, because we aren't designed for that. We aren't designed to know all the information that we know. We aren't designed to hold emotional currency for everything that matters to everyone. But we can validate, we all have friends who have causes that they are very passionate about, and we can validate that. We can encourage, we can sponsor, we can give, but that does not have to be the place I hold space for. And so oftentimes I think people it's blurry because there's so much coming in that that it's supposed to matter to them.
I think about, Micro used to have this show on Facebook that can't remember the name of it now. It's just these little Facebook episodes where he would find people who were doing significant things for the betterment of mankind in their cities. And there was one story about a man who was in between jobs, and his Bible study had helped out a foster family, and he realized that he could build bunk beds.
Oh, yeah.
And he started building bunk beds to give to foster families for when they had children, that too many children and not enough beds. And it was a simple design. They would show up. They would have everything they needed, prefab from the workshop. They could just assemble in the space and put down the bedding. And he made a comment. He said, sometimes we show up and there are other problems, but we're only there to do one thing. We're not there to solve all the other problems. We're there to put up a bunk bed. And what began to happen is he started this chapter, and they called it Sleep in Heavenly Peace. And it began to multiply in chapters around the country. And all they did was just to answer one of the needs. And I think for a person like me, it's easy to get overwhelmed by seeing all of the problems. And my mind's, of course, going in 1,000 directions it's about having healthy boundaries or borders or understanding what your role is in that space. And his role was to show up, assemble a bunk bed and bedding, to help the family and to leave. And it's a role, but it's a purpose at the same time.
It's a role and it's a purpose, but that is such a clear example of purpose driven. He had a purpose, and my drive is to meet that need with the thing that I can provide. And that's kind of how we have to get when we are trying to go on this discovery journey. Is I want you to try new things. I want you to expose yourself to experiences that you haven't had before, and metabolize it. How did this work for me? Is a passion area? Does this resonate to something back to middle childhood that, oh gosh, I used to care about this? I want you to do that, but you cannot say yes to everything all the time. We have to narrow it down. And I really love that example, because this is somebody who really understood his purpose, and he stayed the course. The purpose, this discovery journey is so important, because purpose equals or brings about significance to us. And significance turns into us knowing that we have value. And when we show up in the world knowing that we have something to offer, something that we bring to the table, something that we can contribute, there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
There's nothing like it.
It's pretty unstoppable. But when you're talking about purpose, you're not talking position. You're not talking power. You're not talking
purpose and significance.
Influence.
That's right.
Influence you can be, but
purpose, it's important to understand that significance, when I talk about purpose giving us significance does not equal or mean power, influence, or popularity. That's where you'll see kids who've grown up in this digital age, and they've grown up with YouTube and all the social medias, and they see people getting subscribers, and they see that as those people having purpose, and it's not their purpose. They see them because they have power, they have influence, they have popularity. And we have to be careful not to chase those things, because those things are fleeting and they don't stand. Our purpose, remember, follows us our whole life.
So what about at work? I mean, I know that we've danced around it. I brought it up a couple of times, of being able to see myself reflected, like what you said about me, reflected at my job. Even with the whole ribbon comment, which is a whole other part of my journey, me and ribbon. But roles. I've been in a position where I got promoted, and there was no one to take all of my other roles. So some of them came with me. And then we had a downturn and we had to do some layoffs, and some of the other roles were now open-ended. And so other people had to absorb roles. Well, the next thing you know, you've got roles out there that you're doing that don't necessarily correlate to your actual job description or your purpose for being employed. And they're just these kind of add-on things. So what happens when, like, let's talk about roles and purpose in the job setting, in the workplace.
So when it comes to work and the roles that we have, I say our role is our role. You're being paid to do your job.
Right.
And you are right. And this is kind of a common faulty flaw thing that we can say about organization is they add on more roles to an already existing full-time job role. I like to encourage people, if somebody like you who started taking on a bunch of different roles that really if you go back to your job description, you're like, well, I'm doing like 4 different job descriptions. How did this happen? I want to encourage people to kind of do it. What's your favorite phrase? Reverse engineering?
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
You have to ask your question, how did I get here? How did I take on so many roles? And there's some variations to the answer there. One is you're told to. And when you're told to, that's a different beast, because you've got to start negotiating and start advocating for yourself with the people who manage you. But are you taking on roles because you're a yeser? I say yes, I raise my hand a lot. Or am I taking on roles because, that sounds fun, that sounds interesting, and I really don't like a lot of what I already do. But guess what? Nobody's going to come and say, hey, you don't have to do that anymore. They're just going to say, keep doing what you don't like and also take on. That would happen to me. I'd think, I'll take that because maybe I won't have to do the other stuff, but it doesn't usually work out that way. You have to ask the specific question of, how did I get into this position of spinning so many plates in this one job? So that's our roles. How do we bring purpose into our job? You bring it with you. You simply bring it with you. And finding out what you value, what sparks passion in you, your personal values plays into going back to worldview. What are the things that you value the most in the world, in people, in your surroundings, in the community? Mm-hmm. Bring that with you to your job.
Mm-hmm. I know we're going to touch on this when not every one of the spokes on the wheel, that while they all have equal significance, not every one of them has a buddy or holds hands really significantly with another one. But purpose-driven almost always shows up in what you're going to do for impacting others and volunteering outside of yourself.
That's right.
And I know we're going to touch on that later, but that is one of the ways I have seen people bring this to work, to say their friends know about it. This is a passion project of mine. Will you support that? My father, avid golfer, helps an inner city work in his town, and they do a golf tournament every year. It was one of his close friends' passion projects, started the golf tournament, and he would get businesses to bring foursomes to come and play and donate money to this charity every year. So it was really easy for him to tie 2 of his passions together, right, for this purpose. And often businesses will support your little league team, will show up and do different things like that. And we're going to touch on that, I know, in a couple different areas in the future when it comes to...
We are. And I want to remind our listeners that they're going to be able to download our wheel that we keep talking about, because we're going to refer to the wheel a lot, and it's our key functional areas. Key
indicators.
Key functional indicators, which is the wheel of understanding ourselves and how we're doing in life. But as we close out this episode, I want to encourage, if you want to know more, or if you want to explore more, you want to start this journey and you're a reader, one of my favorite books is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. It's a quick, easy read, but there's a lot of depth to it, and it's one of the most inspiring stories. He's also a psychologist, or was a psychologist. Inspiring stories of how to understand, but not just discover, but live out your purpose. That's it for us today. The Healthy Hurried Human Podcast is presented by Foxygen Consulting. At Foxygen, we provide business and performance psychology and consulting. We believe healthier people make a healthier workplace. Foxygen Consulting, breathing new life into your organization.